To start, the coming out experience is unique for each person, but for so many, it can be difficult, which is often how it's depicted in mainstream media. But Egghead and Twinkie bring so much heart and levity to that journey. Why was that so important to you as a storyteller, and how were you able to toe that line so effortlessly?
Yeah, I really wanted to tell a positive, more uplifting, heartwarming story, just because I hadn't really seen the coming out process, especially kind of portrayed in that light. And I don't know, I'm someone I like cope with hard or awkward things with humor. And so I think that that's something it came very natural to me to write, a comedy about coming out.
Yeah, and you take audiences on such an emotional journey throughout the film. They're gonna laugh at different points. There will be tears shed. What was that casting process like, finding your two leads who not only have to play with the comedic beats, but the dramatic ones as well?
I mean, it was a tall order to ask for, though I must say, when we originally cast Egghead and Twinkie, it was actually for the short film that came first before the feature. So the short had much less emotional depth because it's a short. I mean, it's only
Yeah.
like 8 minutes long. So when I brought them on, frankly, I didn't know if they would have, the emotional depth to tackle the feature. And so it was through making the short that, we formed that relationship. I saw what they were capable of. I saw their
Mm.
amazing chemistry together. And then I was like, okay, this is a no-brainer. Like, I'll bring them back for the feature.
Perfect segue to this next question. But I imagine as a writer, you have such a strong sense of who these characters are. But when you cast your actors, you want them to make them their own. Having worked with Sabrina and Lewis on the short, how did you play to each of their strengths and their interpretations of Etiquette and Twinkie for the full-length feature? What was that collaboration process like?
Oh, I'd say it was such a big help having both Lewis and Sabrina in mind when I was writing the feature
Mm.
because I could really hear their voices in my head as I was writing the jokes. I'd be like, oh, Lewis would say that really funny, or like Sabrina could pull this off. And so I really do think that that helped me in writing the characters. And I really think that their voice and their energy as people very much kind of molded the characters in the feature-length script.
They have such incredible chemistry on this screen. Was there a moment when you were filming either the short or the full-length feature where you realized they had that dynamic needed to bring these two characters to life?
I don't know if it was one specific moment. It was more so just, I guess, a sense of relief that happened when we were shooting the short because Lewis and Sabrina, before we did the short, they had never met each other. There's actually a decent age gap between the two of them as well. When we were doing the short, Lewis was 16, so he's like a little baby, and Sabrina was, closer to my age. So I was like, oh, is it going to be really weird that Lewis is so much younger? But I don't know. The second that we put the two of them together, they just have this amazing chemistry, and I really bought them as best friends, and
Yeah.
they made my work really easy.
Also write with so much authenticity, and many people, I think, especially the Asian community, will resonate in that moment where Twinkie explains the meaning behind her nickname, how she's taken that power back. How much of the story is based on your own personal experiences and anecdotes, and why was it so important for that scene to be included for you?
Mm. Well, Twinkie is very much her own character, and the story is very much a fictionalized story. But I think, I was pulling from a lot of my own feelings growing up, I think, as a queer mixed Asian person. So speaking to Twinkie's name specifically and a scene that happens between her and another Asian American character through the film where they talk about their identity, that was really important for me to include the aspect of racial identity in the film as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's this weird idea that it's like, oh, if it's a coming out movie, then it's a gay movie. And, you can't throw in race on top of that. Like that'll be too much for people to handle. But I don't know. I mean, that's been my whole life. Like life is intersectional, things are intersecting. And so I was, excited and nervous about the fact that, I would be including this character who essentially reclaims an insult that's been used against her as a means of maybe self-defense or a means of reclamation or
Mhm.
whatever that is to empower herself with where she's at right now in life.
You're also able to incorporate elements of your character into the viewing experience through the usage of animation. What was that process like, weaving that into the narrative and also finding moments where it served the story and didn't distract from it?
Yeah, it was such a balance trying to toe that line. And originally, when I wrote the script, I did write in several of the animation cues. But then when we got into post and we had the footage, there was a degree of kind of watching it as a whole and then reassessing and being like, okay, is this adding, or do we need more animation here? And that was very much a collaborative process between myself and our lead animator, Jill Cefalo Sanders. And it's interesting. We were sitting back, we were watching the film, and we were trying to find, moments that would be enhanced by adding more animation. And it's so funny. There's this whole section of the film. It's about a 20-minute section where Twinkie's going through some hard stuff, and
Yeah.
she's really hard on her luck and struggling with herself. And it was during that time that Jill and I were kind of reassessing that we realized, oh, we actually don't want any animation during this whole 20-minute chunk of the film where Twinkie's at rock bottom. So we actually went in and we pulled out all of the animation that was in that section. And I think that that was the
Mm.
right decision, but something that came about during post.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that scene in particular, and without giving any spoilers, there's that really vulnerable moment towards the end of the film where everything catches up to Twinkie, and Sabrina brought so much nuance to that scene in particular. As a director, how did you create the space for her to dive into that moment?
Um, well, first of all, I think Sabrina is just amazing and she's willing to be vulnerable. And that's really the first thing that I was looking for in someone to play that role. But also with that particular scene, I wanted to shoot it kind of basically in one take. The
Mm.
DP was moving with her through the whole scene and it was all in one. In post, we then went and we chopped it up. So it doesn't really play as a oneer when you watch it. But for us shooting it, I didn't want to interrupt her or get in her space or be, guiding her through it. I wanted her to have the space and the time to really live through it in real time. Um, and that was something I felt blessed to be able to do, that we were able to carve out that time to do it and do it right. And she is just phenomenal in that scene.
Yeah, it's a standout throughout the film. And you also have experience acting as well. Have you found that your experiences in front of the camera have impacted the way that you approach your work as a director and a writer, and vice versa?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely. I'm so glad that I have a background in acting and in working with actors because it's helped me so much as a director. Like there's a
Shorthand,
language
right?
of actors.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it just makes it easier. It makes it easier to talk to actors when you've done
Uh,
it
th-
yourself.
this story has been 6 years in the making, but it's only grown in relevance with the political climate. As you brought this film around the film festival circuit, could you have ever imagined that it would have had the impact that it's had on audiences where they feel seen and less alone? And how much does that motivate you to continue to be that much needed voice in this industry?
I mean, I hoped that it would reach people in that way, but you never know. It was a terrifying moment when we were submitting to festivals and, getting our fair share of rejections and all of that as well. But it's really blown me away, just the number of festivals we've been to, the places we've been able to travel and bring this film, the audiences we've been able to share it with. Because when I wrote it, I thought, oh, this is going to be a film, for young LGBT people is kind of what I had in mind. But it's really grown into something so much larger than I could have ever imagined. And the people that have watched it and enjoyed it have been people of all ages, all walks of life. And yeah, it's been really incredible to get that sort of audience feedback.
Yeah, and this is such a huge undertaking whenever you're doing a film, and this is the first feature that you've done, and I know a lot of your crew as well. This is their first feature. What scene or moment are you most proudest of?
Oh, what scene? Oh, I don't know. Um, you're right in that everyone that worked on the film, I think it was everyone's first feature. So we were kind of learning as we went along. I guess I'd say one of the scenes that sticks out to me is maybe okay, well, I don't want to give anything away, but the chase scene where Egghead and Twinkie are running around in
Mm.
the dark, that scene for me as like, a micro budget filmmaker, no money, people are like, do not write a chase scene in your movie. Like I had so many people tell me, you got to take that scene out. Like you don't have the budget to keep that scene in. But I was so adamant that it was going to stay in and that we would figure it out. So every time I watch that scene, I'm just proud of our whole crew for basically figuring out a way to make it work.
Yeah, and one of the messages that I took away from this film is that you'll find the people in your life who will accept you for who you are. Who are the people in your own life who've impacted you as a storyteller?
Well, I'd say the people that I know in my real life, it's definitely the teachers that I've had growing up. I was really, really fortunate to have, English teachers and theater teachers and film teachers, especially, that supported me in my journey as a young person. Like I fell in love with creative writing and storytelling when I was in the fourth grade because of my fourth grade teacher. So that's something I'm really grateful for, that I've had people in my personal life that have supported me and kind of fostered my growth.
And this is also your feature film debut as a writer director, like we just said. Congratulations, by the way. What's been the most surprising part about this journey? What's been the biggest takeaway?
Oh, I've learned so much, again, kind of through trial by fire and making mistakes and getting back up and learning and collaborating. I guess I'd say one of the biggest things that I have learned is just the importance of teamwork and how incredible it is when people can get together to make something happen. There is no way that I would have been able to make this movie on my own. And I'm not just talking about our cast and crew, who are obviously incredible, but just the sheer number of supporters that have come
Yeah.
together to fund this movie and support us on social media. And it really is beyond me. And that's something that I guess I've learned not to take for granted, and something that I hope to harness on my future projects.
What has it been like for you being able to take this film around the festival circuit and see reactions firsthand and with a crowd at a theater?
Oh my God, it makes all of the struggles worth it. It really does. It's like healing a little part of my soul every time. Um, I remember there's one that sticks out to me at our international premiere at BFI Flair, which was in London. It was our first ever in-person screening. And I was there and I was watching the movie, and I noticed there was this older gentleman in the front row, and I ended up watching him more than the actual movie because his reactions were amazing. Like I could see him laughing, smiling, crying, and then like laughing through the tears. Like he was going on a whole emotional journey, and I think it's just so inspiring for me, and it really inspires me to push through the obstacles that we face.
Yeah, you touched upon this earlier, but you tackle so many universal themes throughout this narrative. Why do you think comedy lends itself to this type of storytelling?
Oh, I think comedy is so underestimated. Because I think sometimes people see a comedy and they're like, this isn't real cinema because there's no angst, or,
Mm,
I don't know. People tend to dismiss it. But I think that comedy can be so powerful because people don't realize that they're learning and their perspective is
yeah.
growing and they're embracing new ideas because they're having fun. Um, so it's like I found that you can change people's minds maybe even a little easier with comedy because they're enjoying themselves.
Love that. I got one final question for you. You're such an exciting voice in the industry now. Outside of this project, what's next for you? Are there plans to maybe do a sequel to this?
See, we've been asked that so many times now. People are like, where's Egghead and Twinkie 2? I think if Egghead and Twinkie 2 comes to me naturally, then I'll consider it. But I think at this point in time, I'm looking at my second feature, which would be a brand new story. So at the moment, I'm considering a few ideas, one of which is a time traveling lesbian rom-com. So,
Hmm.
we're keeping it fresh and exciting.
Yeah.